Welcome and thank you for joining me here on Film Pro Productivity. Each week I introduce concepts that film professionals and other creatives can use to make life easier and avoid creative burnout. I also present time management and lifestyle hacks for a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 24, Toxic People and How to Deal with Them. Today I'm tackling a subject which I think every one of us faces at least every now and again, and it's one of a number of episodes where I tell it like it is. The Series 1 Time Wasters episode was in the same vein and hugely popular and generated a lot of activity on social media, and I suspect that my episode of a few weeks ago, Collabo Haters, will have gone down just as well. Today I will be talking all about different forms of toxic people, advising you how to spot them, how to avoid them, and how to get rid of them. Last week's episode was called Killing the Microwave Mentality and talked about exchanging the fast food, Netflix on demand, Amazon dropshipping everything now mindset in regard to achieving your goals and exchanging it for a longer term, more deliberate and driven one, utilising lessons from the productivity topics of compounding, front-loading and the lean startup principle. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Hammering away at a problem with short bursts of energy and then giving up because your proverbial axe isn't sharp is a fast route to failure in achieving your goals. Ultimately, the lessons of last week can be summed up though with the words, don't give up on what you want most for what you want now. Check out that episode if you missed it. I do normally check in to see how you've got on with the call to action this following week, but as it's a kind of long-term goal planner, I don't think I'll bother. But for those of you that are interested, you can get in touch with me via social networking on Twitter at FilmProProdPod or on Facebook at FilmProProductivity. And if you'd rather message me privately, you can go to the contact page on the official website, filmproproductivity.com, and drop me a line there. The more adventurous amongst you might even want to use the SpeakPipe service and leave me a voicemail. Basically, you can leave a message of up to 90 seconds if you've got a mic at your end, and I can reply with a voice message as well. It's kind of cool. We're nearing the end of this season, and I am now looking towards Season 3 for topics and stuff, so if you've got any ideas at all, please do drop me a line. I really need to know what you're struggling with so that I can tailor this podcast to try and combat some of your woes. But back to this week where we are talking about toxic people, and later on I'll be identifying, I think it is 6 archetypes of toxic personality to watch out for. Danielle Kopkel, founder of the Internal Acceptance Movement, says on the subject that you don't ever have to feel guilty about removing toxic people from your life. It's one thing if a person owns up to their behaviour and makes an effort to change. But if a person disregards your feelings, ignores your boundaries and continues to treat you in a harmful way, they need to go. And for the record, folks, I agree with her. Toxic people are everywhere, lying about in wait for us, defriended and shunned, and they will pop up and draw the life essence from your soul if you're not too careful. Oh, and toxic people don't appear out of the shadows wearing a dark cloak and bearing a malevolent grin of mischievousness, by the way. They sneak in under your radar and turn on you when you least expect it. And they can be very difficult to spot, as within themselves, even they sometimes, only sometimes mind, even they don't know that they're toxic at all. Like arsenic though, toxic people will slowly kill you. They will take away your positive spirit and play with your mind and emotions. When you spend a few years on this earth, you begin to realise that there's some people out there that are just difficult. They are drawn to the reasonable amongst us and they make our lives in one way or another miserable by their actions. I found a quote on Tumblr and it's by John Mark Green on this topic. He says, "Toxic people attach themselves like cinder blocks tied to your ankles and then invite you for a swim in their poisoned waters." There are many different types of people in the world, and from a short Google search you'll see that there are many that can easily be classified as toxic. The only thing these people seem to do is spread negativity, create problems and stress, manipulate others, and worse. I found articles listing up to 25 types of toxic archetype. Most articles offer up 7 to 10 toxic archetypes, from the naysayer and the gossiper to the manipulator and the victim. And if you're in a hurry for the short version of this podcast, by the way, if you recognise them here, get rid of them. The toxic personality's power lies in their subtlety and makes them sometimes difficult to spot, but if you're the one who's continually hurt, or the one who is constantly adjusting your own behaviour to avoid their angst or whatever, then the chances are that it's really not you, it's them. Being able to spot their harmful behaviour is the first step to minimising their impact. There are plenty of things toxic people do to manipulate people and situations to their advantage, so let's jump in and start identifying their character types. Just for the record, I'm going to put aside the subtypes that I've already identified in episode 12, Time Wasters, and episode 20, Bad Collaborators, although to some extent they are really unavoidable here too. If you want to know more about those topics, just check out those episodes. The first toxic personality type that I'll delve into here is the energy vampire. These emotional and mental energy leeches tend to suck the positivity out of you and bleed you emotionally dry. Energy vampires were the very first of the toxic personality types that I ever recognised. I suddenly realised that vampires do exist, that they are around us even now, and that they lurk just as much on the internet as they do in real life, so they can bring you down with a DM as easily as in person. The emotional vampire will often present as a victim, which, when you do the research on this topic of toxic personalities, is kind of a separate thing, but I see them as a subtype of this archetype. They will always choose to suffer rather than trying to deal with their own problems. At first you might feel for them and their plight, but you'll soon realise that every interaction with them is needy and negatively charged, and you will have to limit your contact or maybe even cut ties. When that happens, you can expect a blow-up, by the way, as they rage at your denial of their dietary needs. An energy vampire can never steal your energy unless we consciously or unconsciously permit them to take it. Just remember that your time and energy are essential for your own life. Don't be overly willing to give them away. The second personality type is the drama magnet. With a drama magnet, something is always wrong, always, and of course, once a problem is solved, another one appears on the horizon. They thrive in a crisis because it makes them feel important. And like the energy vampire, they want something of you. They want your empathy, sympathy, and support. And if you offer help and solutions, they never seem to take it. Watch out for these ambulance chasers though. They'll drag you down into their drama, mess with your head, and steal away your time. And these shouldn't be mixed up with drama queens, by the way. Drama queens are equally draining, as they don't just seek out drama, they create it. I mentioned this in episode 18, Protecting Your Mental Energy. If you've got someone in your life that seems to be forever creating unnecessary drama everywhere they go, they are at the same time stealing your energy in having to deal with it just as much as the emotional misery guts vampire that I mentioned a minute ago. Personal coach Cheryl Richardson talks about this. She says, just because some people are fueled by drama doesn't mean you have to attend the performance. Next up we have the control freak. These people want to control everything and everyone around them. They attempt to control everything you do, everything you say, and even everything you think. And when they discover that you've done something they haven't approved of, they go chicken oriental on your ass. That means mental for those of you that don't speak Scottish, by the way. They just freak out when you disagree with them, and they will aggressively try to convince you that they are right and you're wrong. These people are so enthralled by their own reality that they cannot comprehend how anyone can think differently from them. Thinking differently to them is like a betrayal, and you become, in their mind, an enemy. By not agreeing with their every, sometimes deranged opinion, they paint you as the villain in the story of their life, the story in which they, of course, are the hero. In a business or creative relationship, they will tie you down further and further into their systems and their way of doing things and take from you only what they deem to be useful. They will micromanage you to the point where creativity is dead. For no matter what you suggest, no matter how much time you spend on developing solutions, they will only ever want to do it their way. This in turn means that you are less and less likely to suggest anything for fear of evoking their wrath. In a relationship, this person will give you no breathing room and nag you until you agree with them. Be careful. These people will go after your emotional, conversational and mental freedom until you have nothing left to give. In this situation, I can only give you one piece of advice. If you really want true happiness, get out while you can. This character type often manifests itself as an egotist, narcissist or egomaniac. They think the world revolves around them, so they act accordingly. They are not interested in anybody and anything except themselves and often present to be arrogant. Some people mistake arrogance for confidence, of course, but there is a big difference between them. Confident people inspire others, while arrogant people make others feel inferior. Fourth on my list here is the critic. Have you ever felt judged or criticised no matter what you do? Negative criticism is different than advice, and that has to be recognised, as that sort of critic in your life will introduce a lot of unnecessary toxicity to it. These people might never overtly attack you, but they will insult your beliefs, appearance and thoughts, often because they have low self-esteem, and they might even manifest themselves as a control freak or other toxic archetype at the same time. It's bad enough, as you'll know from episode 6, to deal with the inner critic, but when you have an actual critic in the room, it makes being productive in your life just that much harder. Very often these toxic critics talk down to you, not from any real experience they have, but from their own often skewed opinions on how things should be done. As creatives, the last thing we need is someone negatively criticising our work, our ethics or our abilities, who hasn't been asked their opinion and who cannot balance that criticism with goodwill and positivity. The critic becomes the hater when they actively try to destroy your reputation. These critics go further than just saying negative things about your work. They want to ensure that what they say is heard on social networks and in the comment sections of your postings, and really they'll take it as far as you let them get away with it. Don't give these haters the air to fan the flames of their hate and disrespect. Starve them of the oxygen of your responses and let their petty critical fires fizzle out instead. Now, one of the most common toxic personality types, even though you might not be aware of it, is the manipulator. Sarah Nielsen, whose book Manipulation: How to Recognise and Outwit Emotional Manipulation and Mind Control in Your Relationships, says, that's a long name for a book by the way, but she says, manipulators use diversion tactics such as not giving a straight answer or steering the conversation to another topic, unquote. They have a way of sending out the vibe that you owe them something. They also have a way of taking from you or doing something that hurts you. Then they turn around and tell you that they were doing it all for you. Remember again that you don't owe anybody anything. And if, in your heart, it doesn't feel like it's a favour, it's not. Author and poet C. Joybell C. said, "There are those whose primary ability is to spin wheels of manipulation. It is their second skin, and without these spinning wheels, they simply do not know how to function." Psychological manipulation is the exercise of undue influence through mental distortion and emotional exploitation with the intention to seize power, control, benefits and privileges at the victim's expense. PsychologyToday.com explains that most manipulative individuals have 4 common characteristics. 1. They know how to detect your weaknesses. 2. Once found, they use your weaknesses against you. 3. Through their shrewd machinations, they convince you to give up something of yourself in order to serve their self-centred interests. And 4. In work, social and family situations, once a manipulator succeeds in taking advantage of you, he or she will likely repeat the violation until you put a stop to the exploitation. And this article, by the way, is fan-bleeding-tastic. It's got some really powerful stuff in it. I'll link to it in the show notes if you want to check it out, and in all honesty, I could do an episode just on this topic, but for now, here's a few signs to look out for in manipulators. Projection is number 1. This is a manipulative technique when the manipulator projects, i.e. attributes their behaviours, thoughts and feelings onto other people. For instance, a person who is highly jealous may accuse others of acting jealously. Number 2 is shaming. This is a common manipulation technique, but it is also one of the most harmful. The victim is often unaware of the abuse, and it usually comes from a person who they admire and trust. Number 3 is triangulation. Toxic people will often bring another person into the mix. They will say something along the lines of, well, James agrees with me. In fact, he thinks that you're the one who shouldn't be trusted because... and then they take it further. Number 4 is diversion. This is an extremely frustrating tactic. The toxic person will often change the subject as a means to divert your attention from the conversation and avoid taking the blame for their actions. And number 5 is gaslighting. That's a term I've mentioned before, of course, and it's from the film Gaslight. Toxic people who gaslight want to make sure that you are so unsure of yourself that you doubt your own perception and sanity. They want you to be dependent on them because that is what makes them powerful. This is a difficult one to spot if you're in it, but you can face it down with provable facts. Of course, when you do that, you must expect them to change to tactic 4, diversion tactics, possibly decorated with a smattering of rage. It's my sincere hope that this section on manipulators will highlight someone in your life that's doing this to you and allow you to recognise that problem and deal with it. Now, although there are many, many other types of toxic personality out there, I'm going to end this short list with gossip mongers. Writer Nurjean Chaneco says, "Watch out for those types who deliberately tear other people down. One day they will tear you down too." Gossipers are highly interested in other people's personal misfortunes and failures, and they love to spread this kind of news everywhere, even if it's got no basis in fact. They see having a deep conversation about someone as an exchange of information. They do it to elevate themselves above their insecurity, but there's no distinction between speculation and fact. Few things are more destructive than gossip, and no matter how you look at it, spreading malicious rumours will not only hurt the subject of the gossip, it makes the gossiper look bad too. The only good thing about the gossip archetype, though, is that they are easy to spot. So be vigilant that you don't get sucked in by them. And remember the old adage, believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you see. So that's just 6 examples of toxic personality, but I could go on. How's about chronic liars who would lie to you about others and lie to others about you? Or the naysayer who is always negative and pessimistic? The slacker who avoids real work and will demotivate you no matter what you do? The envious who measures their success only against others and is never happy for their own accomplishments? The needy who only comes to you when they want something from you? The bully who tries to intimidate you to do what they want, or the unreliable, the temperamental, the coward, the touchy, and the cynic? The list goes on. And the question I'm sure on your mind now is, how do you deal with these toxic personalities if you're stuck with them? Robert Chu said, "Don't ask why people keep hurting you. Ask yourself why you are allowing it to happen." Unquote. There's no two ways about it. Toxic people are one of life's greatest challenges. Interacting with them will leave you emotionally wiped out and feeling frustrated, unfulfilled, and possibly angry. Don't allow yourself to become worn down as a result of giving and getting nothing in return. If you recognise these personality traits and you have someone in your life who you dread seeing, who doesn't respect your opinions or makes you feel bad about yourself in any way, then you just have to say no and get rid of them. I'm sure it's not a surprise for you to hear that this is the advice that I'm going to offer, as I mentioned it right at the top of the show, but no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel to say it, it's most likely the best way to break away from the toxic personality who has infiltrated your life. Singer Huey Morgan says, "You learn a lot about a person when they don't get what they want. So very often you'll find that your jailbreak will have an adverse effect on them, and they will likely become angered and accusatory. You'll get over it though, and so will they." The removal of that toxic personality from your life, no matter what pot shots they take at you as you go, will lift your spirits and grant you a freedom in your heart and soul that will be far more valuable than whatever you have perceived to have lost. And of course, I know that it's not always possible to walk away from, say, family members, but you can at least hold them at arm's length and not breathe in their toxicity by limiting contact. I'll sum up with another quote by Danielle Kopka. She points out that not all toxic people are cruel and uncaring. Some of them love us dearly. Many of them have good intentions. Most are toxic to our being simply because they aren't inherently bad people, but they aren't the right people for us. And as hard as it is, we have to let them go. Life is hard enough without being around people who bring you down, and as much as you care, you can't destroy yourself for the sake of someone else. You have to make your own well-being a priority, whether that means breaking up with someone you care about, loving a family member from a distance, letting go of a friend, or removing yourself from a situation that seems painful. You have every right to leave and create a safer space for yourself. And again, remember that these archetypes that I list here are the extreme versions of toxic personality types. You may find that even you, the listener, might occasionally find yourself gossiping or whatever. Just be careful that one day you don't wake up and discover that you've become that which I warn against here. And your call to action this week is to strengthen your resolve. Use this episode to tune in your toxicity detectors and beware. Try cutting out the toxic person that has come to mind as you listen to this show. You don't need to create a drama about it. Just close them off and shut them out. If someone has made you miserable in the last 12 months and you've taken it, then why give them permission to do so in the next 12 months? Take action and take control. And if you don't have a toxic personality in your life, have a drink, relax, and thank the stars that your life is so good without any of these archetypes that I've talked about here today. I'll end with the words of Robert Chu. He said, "It's amazing how quickly things can turn around when you remove toxic people from your life." Next week, I'm going to be looking at browser extensions for Google and how you can use them to make you far more productive. For now, though, thanks again for choosing to spend your valuable time here with me. Take control of your own destiny, and that might involve bumping a toxic personality out of your life. Keep on shooting, and join me next time on Film Pro Productivity. The music that you're listening to right now is Adventures by Ehimitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website at filmproproductivity.com. Please follow my personal account on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or follow the show on Twitter at filmproprodpod or on Facebook at filmproproductivity. Thanks again for supporting the show by subscribing, spreading the word, please do tell people about it, and leaving me an awesome review, preferably on iTunes, as that's the one that seems to matter. Have a great week.